Some people can
No,
pull off
he's
the
not.
$5,000 handbag. Not Julian. So they're made for each other.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That was the other thing. So I had somebody send me a picture of Julian driving through Austin
Oh,
Wait,
wait,
that
hold
with
on,
his,
was
hold on.
actually hit. I thought that was a joke. That's actually
that was
his
dead
car with the
serious. That
license plate.
Andiamo,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I
someone
did.
sent that
He
to
does
me.
have that.
I'm starting to like Julian more and more.
Gave
I
it to
want to
me.
go back to what you just said about I had somebody from Austin take pictures of Julian. What? Like you calling in your
You
paparazzi
glossed
buddies
over
or
that.
what?
You got people
Yeah,
in the
they're everywhere.
airport, people around Austin.
Like
You
I had
got
one of my
Yeah, people are
guys.
everywhere. Nobody's safe. Nobody is
Damn.
safe.
All right, we just had Jimmy Miller on. Good episode. We'll get into that in a second. It's definitely an episode for the pickleball junkies, the people who like the very intricate details. Not a lot of instructional stuff, not a lot of other topics. We're just talking the nitty gritty of the merger, pro player contracts, and all that good stuff. But one thing I wanted to bring up, so we are hiring for a social media manager. And basically, we want that social media manager to come from our audience, somebody who watches podcasts, lives and breathes pickleball, knows their way around social media content, graphic design, putting together social clips, and somebody who just wants to be like on the front lines, being the first to news, and being the liaison between the Dink brand and our audience across our different channels. So we want somebody who loves pickleball, and if that sounds like you, reach out to the Dink the Dink team at heydink.com, and we'll try and set something up. And then the other thing is we're looking for somebody to help us create social clips for this podcast. So you see them all the time. You go to our Instagram, but short form video that we can use across Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube Shorts, Facebook, and doing like 3 to 5 clips per week per episode, and we can do that on a part-time basis. So if you like the show and you like creating content, hit us up. Again, it's the Dink team at heydink.com. Let's get into the episode. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, yeah, cut that one out of the recording, Jamie.
It's not what the lead-in's going to be. Is that what we're starting with?
We can start with everybody wondering what we were just laughing at and what Zane just said. It's very inappropriate.
It was borderline cancelable, to be honest.
We've got
But if there's anybody that knows about that, it's got to be our guest today.
the lead ambassador for Big Pickle.
He was.
Jimmy
He
Miller.
used to be
Yes.
a very, very controversial figure. Now he's just Big Pickle has got to him. So let's see what he's got for us today.
Just trying to get paid,
Yeah.
you know?
We
Just
got to
trying
make
get
money
paid.
out here. It's tough in these streets.
Yeah. It
Canceling
is. It's hard not
Canceling
life.
mortgages right now, not in this economy. You got to find other ways.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Jimmy, you kind of like burst onto the pickleball scene, probably last summer when you started King of the Court? When did that officially launch?
Yeah, I think our first podcast was end of May 2023. So Tyler just called me one day and said, "Hey, Jilly B." So honestly, it started. We owe Jilly B because he called me and he said, "Hey, Jilly B just like ripped me on Instagram for being a bad partner. I'm rolling my eyes and I want to go back at her." And he's like, "Do you want to come on a podcast?" I was like, "Sure."
And that's the birth out of
And that's the birth of
grudge.
King of the Court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, were you? So I've heard a little bit, but you were pretty in the know in pickleball before starting the podcast. But since then, you're on. It seems like a first name basis with every single team owner, everybody in pickleball. Take us through how you sort of went from a sort of an outsider to the Jimmy Miller you are today.
Yeah. I think originally I was more of like a fan, and so I watched a lot of pickleball, which, you know, I wouldn't say I was really in the know, but I watched a lot of pickleball. And we do have a lot of pros that live in Utah. You know, I mean, obviously Tyler, Callie, Megan Dazon, Etta, Spencer. I mean, we have a big list, and so I was friends with all of those guys. But once this happened, I kind of made a comment on the podcast about becoming a GM. And Richie Twazin reached out for the Black Bears. You know Richie well, obviously.
Yeah. Richie's a goat.
And he reached out, and he was friends with the pickler guys, because Richie was, he's an investor in the pickler. And so through them, he kind of reached out to me and he was like, hey, are you interested in maybe becoming a GM? And I guess Tim Parks had actually seen our podcast. And Tim was like, hey, Richie, this might be a total disaster, but this guy's pretty funny and he knows his shit. So I think you should do it. And so Richie reached out and we just kind of got to talking and he's like, let's just have you come on as an assistant GM and see what happens. And then kind of from there started to meet more people. I think maybe gain a little trust, and I don't even know what happened after that. It's been a whirlwind.
Yeah,
all I know is my phone does not stop ringing.
I always, that's got to be cool. I always think about like, imagine that, but put it in like the NBA or the NFL. Imagine being like,
sure,
the Woj of one of those bigger sports, and how
Schefter, Woj, right? Chris Mortensen just died, and it's like,
because
it would be unbelievable.
And you've kind of become that for.
I mean, Pickle's cool, but
are they your sort of your role models?
No, that's the thing is I never intended for any of that. Like I literally never set out to be some insider. Like I don't even feel like I am, but I never intended for that. It just kind of was like one of those things where you just start talking to different people and it just kind of
might not have been your intent, but do you think there's anybody that's has more insider information in pickleball at this point than you?
Well, I think you do because you won the vote. Most influential by an overwhelming margin.
That just means people actually listen to what he says.
Yeah. So
influential might be different from being in the know, though.
Okay, that's fair. I think there's people out there that do, but maybe not from both sides, if that makes sense. I mean, there's guys out there that obviously are very much in the know and they just keep it to themselves. But I think that I have a good relationship with during the tour wars, as we called it, I think that you guys trademarked that.
Yeah, which is part of our
I think I had
whatever.
Yeah. There it is. That's your 35%.
He knows the statistics.
I think I had a good relationship with both sides.
He knows exactly who beat him out.
Insider information right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the goal for Jimmy in pickleball? Like you've built this podcast, you know everybody, you're part of the Black Bears for now. Like what's the ultimate like goal?
I mean, honestly, I don't even have one. I didn't even set out to have a goal. We didn't like, it just has like been such a whirlwind the last 6 months that it just continues to like, dude, I just love pickle. Like I love pickleball. Don't Zane. I didn't mean it like that.
I moved my lip like a quarter of an inch, and the dude knew he knows I've got a 12-year-old sense of humor.
Yeah.
I just love the sport, and I just want to see the sport grow. And I like anything that I can do to be involved in it. It's fun for me. Like this is. I mean, you guys know. You guys are Zane. Obviously, you're a pro. Thomas, you tried to play pro once, but. Like you guys know, like it's fun. Like it's fun to be involved. The sport's growing. It's awesome to be, part of that conversation. So I don't really have a goal.
You've got the podcast. You're the GM of a team. Do you have anything else that you're working on? Anything you have lined up? So
I did sign a deal with Vulcan, and so we actually have a bag line coming
really?
out. So, that I'm actually designing.
It's pretty cool.
So
congrats.
That's kind of random, but
can we still shit on the Vulcan Ball?
I mean, you can say whatever you want. I mean, we keep it. The one thing with me is I'm still going to keep it 100. Like we got to be honest, right?
Fair.
And I think this weekend is going to be interesting on those foam floors with the Vulcan Ball.
So. Not to derail things, but I had heard a rumor, and I figured you're at the center of all this, and you would know better than anybody. Are they changing balls or changing formulas or whatever for the Minnesota tournament?
Recipe.
Yeah. So I don't know if it will be ready for Minnesota, but I know that they have like been working super hard to like get new resin manufacturer, new manufacturer in general, and they're trying to change it. And because I think what they feel like happened, and I shouldn't speak for Vulcan, so this is just, but the first batch of balls that were tested and were sent to PPA, because PPA did review those balls and approved them, we're good. Like, I mean, I've had them since
What do you mean?
September.
Like they said, yeah, the check cleared and
Yeah. Yes. They said the check cleared, send us whatever you want. But they lasted a long time. They weren't going out around. And then what I think Vulcan feels like happened is that when they ordered in bulk and they ordered 800,000 balls, the quality, may have suffered a little bit. Whether they will admit that or not, the quality suffered, and they were just trying to get them as many balls as they could, and maybe it looks like they've definitely have some issues they've got to fix.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me, right?
So,
Like you do a test batch of, one SKU, you like it, and then you tell this manufacturer, hey, here's the biggest order you've ever handled, assuming they aren't manufacturing for other companies.
yeah.
They have to figure out how to efficiently scale that in a short time frame, and they're probably going to have to change some of their processes, and so the end product ends up being different.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've certainly seen that. I've yet to have a prototype paddle that ends up the exact same as the scaled version.
Right.
Right. That seems to happen all the time. So.
Yeah, and so I think that's kind of what happened. And Vulcan, let's be honest, this is new for them, right? They're not a ball manufacturer. Obviously, they got into it, and they still have responsibility to the pros and to the PPA Tour, the amateurs. But I think they're trying to figure it out, and at least they're like not just like, oh well, check cleared, and they're just sitting on it. Like, people will get used to it. They are trying to make changes, so we'll see what happens. I don't know. I haven't talked to them in a minute, but I know that last I heard that they were trying to get like a new resin manufacturer and make some changes to the ball. So
yeah, no, I crap on them, but like it's I understand where they're coming from, and like honestly, it's not the biggest deal in the world if the ball was not 100% quality for a couple of months, right? We'll look back at this and not care, and if they figure it out and they make it better, this will all be very much overlooked when we're thankful that we're not playing for Duras,
like for you,
right?
Yeah, but for you, it's your livelihood, right? Like, you're playing singles, and it's 9-9, and a ball doesn't come up on a serve. Like, you should get pissed.
Yeah, but I do think there are certain things that affect both players equally, right? Like something like that is, I always think about it, something like wind can be zero sum, where all you have to do is deal with the wind better than your opponent, and it's a win for you, right? So if you can deal with a crappy ball better than your opponent, that's a win for you. Like, obviously, it's not ideal, and we don't want points ending because of faulty balls. Like, that definitely has to get fixed. But in the interim, I think players just kind of need to deal with it that way. If I can deal with this 5% better than my opponent, or not let it bother me, that's a win for me.
Yeah. Or you can go the Matt Riot version, and you can switch out your ball 12 different times in one match.
Every point.
Which is what he did in Mesa.
So they're just not saying no to that then. You can just switch it out whenever.
Yeah. He literally would look at it and be like, that's out of round, and toss it and get a new one. 12.
Honestly, he's definitely doing what I did and just tossing those into his own bag, so he doesn't have to then go buy them for $4.
I actually know for a fact that, like, Riley, which this does not surprise anybody because it's Riley Newman. I mean, this is the guy that takes 4 free sandwiches, but Riley was taking balls and like from the refs and putting them in his bag.
Wait,
for sure. I don't
doesn't do that though.
Yeah, that's
what I'm saying. I mean, this is the guy that he also said, send me to Albuquerque and I'll feed balls to Susan for $1 million and wear my Rolex.
Okay. I just was listening to your podcast. I didn't get all the way through it, but I heard you say something to that effect. Can you expand on that? Because I don't think anybody knows what you're talking about with Riley Newman feeding balls to Susan wearing a Rolex.
Yeah, so we were told allegedly that Riley Newman decided not to take a cut.
Right.
So he said, I'm not taking any cut. He said, put me to work. If you want to send me to clinics, if you want to whatever, put
This
me
is
to
when
work.
Major
And
League
one of the
Pickleball
lines,
offered a handful of their, was it all of their players, a reduced contracts, a reduced amount of days, reduced
yeah,
rate?
reduced days,
Right.
reduced contract. Yeah, exactly. And Riley decided originally, I was told originally he said yes. And then after some talking with his agent, who may or may not be Jim Kloss, we don't know. Maybe Jim's just advising him. He decided not to take a cut. And he basically told whoever, well, I don't know if he's talking to MLP, PPA, but he basically just said, look, you know what? I'm not going to be top 5 in 3 years. There's new people coming into the game. So this is life-changing money. So send me to Albuquerque. I will feed Susan balls, and I'll do it with a smile on my face and a Rolex on my wrist.
I like that. That's one way to put it.
Yeah. So the rumor that we were told is that Riley won't be playing PPAs anymore.
Right. But that's not confirmed. That's sort of just conjecture, and that's based on the fact that he's not willing to take that revised agreement.
It is. He can play PPAs, is my understanding, but he has to pay his own entry fees, and there's not a lot of prize money in it. And then based off those MLP contracts, he has to pay 80% of that prize money to MLP. And so it sounds like by his own, from some of the things he said, he's probably going to choose not to play that. There's no
talk
benefit.
About that for a second. He has to pay 80% of his prize money on the PPA tour to Major League Pickleball.
Yeah, so these contracts state that 80% of some of them, unless you have a carve out, that 80% of your prize money from other events has to be paid to MLP.
And that was the deal that was presented prior to the merger. You don't think that they're going to revise that aspect moving forward?
I mean, I hope they do for the players' sake. I think they owe the players a lot more than, what they're giving them. I mean, I think that there's a reason that a lot of these players are going to play APPs right now. I mean, APP Sacramento's loaded.
Hey, let's
hasn't looked like that since Zane was
playing. Let's back this up a little bit, because we said a lot of stuff, and I think a lot of these things can be broken down sort of one by one. And we did want to talk to Jimmy about a little bit of the overall background here, right? So real high level. Let's go very high level until we get to 2024, right? Because I think we want to establish a full picture for the people who are listening. MLP and PPA were set to merge until August of 2029, when MLP basically went rogue, started signing players. Tour Wars was on.
You just said 2029.
2020. Did I really?
Yeah.
Whoops.
Which is a wild.
2020, 2023. 2023.
You're looking way ahead.
Tour Wars is on. Players are signing MLP, PPA. They basically come to a merge. They announce a merge pretty quickly then. Merger is on shaky terms for pretty much all of 2023, but everybody seems confident that it's going to get done. Doesn't get done by the end of 2023. At the end of 2023, this is when players were starting to be asked to take reductions, whether from the PPA side or from the MLP side. Mm-hmm. And they were negotiating with the new company as if they had merged. So this is the conversation that we're having about Riley, where you said players were being asked to take a 40% cut, and in exchange for a proportionate reduction in days.
Yeah.
I think that's more or less the summary for 2023. What was the sticking point with that 2023 deal, and how do you understand the difference between the 2023 terms of the merge and the new terms of the merge that were just accepted last week?
So I think one of the sticking points was right at the end of 2023, as you guys reported on this, as Nighthead Capital came in, right? And they essentially said, we don't like the terms that Al Tylis and Jason Stein are offering, and we'll come in and we'll do it for less.
Nighthead Capital being the Las Vegas Night Owls, Tom Wagner, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tom Wagner. Now his offer. He wasn't some white knight coming in and,
No pun intended.
saving everybody. It was like 2% less. So, I mean, I think that gets overstated. But what that did was that slowed everything down, because now you have owners second guessing things, right? You have, PPA, I think, getting frustrated with MLP at this point because they thought they had a deal in place that was done and ready to go. And then it was almost like back to the drawing board, where now Tylus and Stein and Tom Wagner are negotiating with each other before they go back to PPA to negotiate back with PPA. So it really just slowed everything down, because in the end, I don't think the terms really changed that much. They stayed very, very similar. So that was one of the issues. The other issue was, these player cuts, right? Like you're aware they were trying to cut all these players' contracts, and it seemed like PPA players weren't taking as big of cuts as MLP players. They weren't being asked to take as big of cuts. A lot of the MLP players were refusing to take cuts. And I even heard some PPA players refuse to take, because they did negotiate with some PPA. I know for a fact, like I was in the room when Tyler Loon got the phone call and took a cut. So maybe he's the only one, but it sucks for him. But so I think that was part of it too, is, they put a number, nobody knows what that number was, but allegedly there was this arbitrary number that both sides had to hit for it to be feasible. And so that kind of slowed things up. But in the end, I actually think everything is very similar to those terms from August, or when they first started talking. That's what's crazy. But when you get 30 millionaires and 10 billionaires in a room, and it almost became more on principle as opposed to financial. So, that's what it felt like in the end. I don't think the money was an issue. I think it was more just the principle behind it.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of these guys also look at like this is only a win if there's a massive outcome, and we have a big stake in that. And I mean, they all want the best terms for their own investment, and there's a lot of competing interests. And then there's like the second part of that, which is just like these guys are used to winning and being and having success, and they're gonna fight and try and create the most successful outcome for their interests. And there's a lot of conflict, and like the Nighthead deal, just people saying, no, I'm going to take the reins and we're going to move it in this direction because it's the best for me and my investment. And that constantly held up the deal. I mean, even at the end, there's competing philosophies as far as like whether a merger is the right path forward for Major League Pickleball, or if Major League Pickleball should say, screw it, we got to go at this by ourselves because that's how we create the biggest and most successful outcome. We need to compete with the PPA and be number one. We can't combine with them and play second fiddle or potentially, I don't know, be at parity.
For sure. And there's fear, like there's legit fear from people that aren't even involved in MLP, but they're involved in like paddle companies and other things that still think that Dundon is just going to fold the MLP at some point.
Right.
That he's got all the control and he's going to, and he doesn't care about MLP, even though they merged. He doesn't have that, he doesn't believe.
But the new co has like a 5-person board, so it's not like Dundon
so now
has
there's
enough control to where
there,
he can just rug pull whenever he wants.
Is the board still the same board that was announced back in September or whatever that was, which would be Dundon,
I think it's
Tylus, Stein,
Levine,
and a Steve Kuhn appointee.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it is still the same board.
Gotcha. So you mentioned that there were some dollar amount targets that needed to be made before this merge closed, and so I think that that leads to something that I wanted to talk about, which was buyouts. I've been hearing about players getting bought out of their contract. Do you know that is that happening from both sides?
Yeah, I believe the buyouts are coming from like the new co will be buying out these players. My understanding is there's about 28 players that have accepted buyouts. And the buyouts are essentially 75% of 1 year's salary or 1 year's. is what most of the buyouts are
And
coming
that's
in
just
at.
an upfront
So,
payout right now.
yep, upfront payout right now. So, if you sign 3 years, $100,000, essentially you're going to get $75,000 right now, and you're done. Now, the benefit of that, I mean, I see two sides. I'd be curious your take on this because Tyler and I kind of differ on this. But I think those players are just going to go play APPs because now you can get prize money. You can go because what I was told is that if you take a buyout, you can still play MLP, but there's no money. There'll be money in a mid-season tournament, prize money, and then a finals, but that's it.
I'd heard
So
similar. So you can still participate in MLP or PPA, but there's very little financial incentive to do
yes,
so. They're banking on the fact that they're the individual tour and they're the team tour, and to a certain extent they're correct, right? Like a good
yeah,
MLP performance can really boost your stock. Thinking about like
yeah,
a Julian Arnold from last June and the beginning of last season, like that sort of skyrocketed his sponsorships. Has probably led to the big deal that he got with the PPA, right? And
yeah,
just
for sure.
performing well in those high profile events is huge. Sponsors want you to be the spot where the most people are going to see you play. So I think they do have a point there where like I think people are still potentially going to want to play those even if there is no money, right? And that doesn't bode well
No,
for the players who do sign the contract, who do have a 3 years down the road, you're
yeah,
now competing against a certain amount of players that are willing to play these events for free just for the notoriety of it,
yeah,
right? So I think our
yeah, for
our
sure.
well, I'm cutting too far ahead, and I did want to ask you about it, but I can't imagine we're going to be ending up at the same payment amounts 3 years down the road.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And it's interesting because the number of players who took buyouts who are willing to play and still want to play is pretty high.
Yeah. So do you know, like, are you going to name any names? Like, who do you know who has taken these buyouts? Are you able to say?
I mean, you can guess. I mean, it's not hard. It's pretty much all the people that I've heard is pretty much everybody that was playing
Mm-hmm.
APPs. I mean, I was told that it was, I don't want to like say it's all Hype Nation, but a lot of the Hype Nation, like those people that were playing APPs anyways, that maybe had signed with MLP or PPA, but still had those APP carve outs. Those seem to be most of the players that I heard that took
Mm-hmm.
buyouts, and so they'll probably continue to play APPs, and then you'll probably see them come play MLP, which is what the plan was for them anyways, because they had those carve outs, and now instead of being locked in to MLP, they now have a nice chunk of money up front, and yeah,
Yeah. No, I mean it's not.
so
It's. I
it
think the saying goes, it's like a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, right? So it's still a lot of uncertainty give with all of this
yeah.
stuff, like with payments. Do we know if that money has hit anybody's bank account yet?
So that's the thing. I don't know that. I don't even know if the mergers I don't even think the merger's actually been funded yet. So I doubt it has at this point. I'm sure, the plan is for it to hit, but yeah, I mean, Zane, when's the last time you've been paid, Zane?
It's been a minute.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's been a while. Hopefully this is like the step in the right direction. But I do think about these buyouts also from a NewCo perspective. And you think if I bought out 30 players who were going to make $3 million over the next, 3 years, for instance, you buy them out for 75% of 1 year. So that means that you just saved yourself, what, 2.2 million? It's pretty significant,
Yeah.
from their perspective as well.
So, from what I understand on the buyout front, what was communicated to players who had not accepted a buyout or some sort of pay cut, basically what was
Yeah.
presented was like, okay, well, you're still going to need to fulfill your 200 days in a shorter time frame, which would be like starting from March 1st to the end of the year. So you still have 200 days to sandwich into 275 days remaining in the year. And they can't guarantee some of those days where you might be at a facility, teaching a clinic, on site, just like running some event. They can't guarantee that those obligations wouldn't conflict with the tournament schedule. And so these players are faced with like, okay, so I don't take the buyout. I want to get paid, but I might have to spend 200 days, 8 hours a day teaching clinics and never actually competing.
Yeah. So, I mean, your boss is now Johnny Pickleball. He is the one that's running these clinics, I guess.
So there is like this whole like clinic.
Yeah. So
business.
What I was told is that they're giving them like a home base, a home facility, and they will run clinics out of those facilities. They're sending them like kits basically to run these clinics. And the clinics are like Tuesday through Thursday from like 8 to 1 and from 5 to 9. And that's how they're going to get their days. And I mean, I haven't seen anybody actually run these clinics yet, but it sounds like it's tough because you want to, like, do you call that bluff or do you not call that bluff, you know? And I think that there's around 10 to 15 players who didn't take that cut. Riley obviously being one of them. And then there's some other, you know, I would say most of the ones there's some pretty significant names, but nothing that like would move the needle like Riley.
Yeah. They don't know like what state they could be in.
Yeah. That's well, the original, I don't know if you saw the original contract, but it said if anything within 400 miles,
480,
you're responsible to drive.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep.
I saw that.
Can you expense the fuel and the gas station jerky?
That's the thing. Yeah. That was the original one. So, I mean, like for us in Utah, Las Vegas is about 360 miles. It's almost a 5.5 hour drive. So they can have you do clinics in Vegas and you just had to drive on down there. Like it's a day trip. Or what?
I mean, I think that it's going to be interesting to see what those 200 days actually end up look like. I think those initial drafts of it were very much just hey, take this. Otherwise we are basically threatening to just screw you. Right. 480 miles of driving, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. every single day. That was more of I think that was don't make us do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I think everybody realizes that, but there are some people calling that bluff. And I think it is showing to be nothing more than a bluff at this point. I have to say it's
but truthfully, I mean, if you have 15, say you have 15 players that didn't take this cut. I mean, it's not bad to have 15 roving instructors, you know, from like a PPA MLP perspective, to have them doing clinics and traveling around, as opposed to, you know, if you had to put 100 players to work, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I remember having some of these conversations. Like, if you had 200 players that you had to put to work, like, you'd be flooding the market with pickleball instruction. And with 10 to 15 of them, if you've got 10 of them, I don't see there's no reason why you can't make $2,500 in a day for some of these clinics, $25K for a day, and you've got 200 of those days. Like, theoretically, they could be turning $5 million on those pros.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. And those pros are still allowed to play MLPs, and that counts as some of your days. So if there's 6 to 9 MLP events, travel, it does say that travel counts. So you knock out 50 or so days there, at least they're still competing. But I do know, for example, one player that did not take a cut, and they said, you know, I'll play MLPs, I'll teach my clinics, but I want to play APPs. And kind of what you guys said, they were told there's no promises, they won't be scheduled over APP tournament days,
which is quite the risk, especially given what we just said, right? 15, 10, between 10 and 15 of those players, it's actually very feasible to deploy them across the country and use up every single one of those days and actually put them to work. And now they can't compete at all. They're just a instructor. They just got converted to a full-time instructor, especially if you're not a big name, right?
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see what happens. We'll see, like, you know, when we start those advertising. Like, honestly, if someone like Tyson McGuffin, who already runs massive clinics and has a huge following, if he chose not to take a cut. He's obviously not on that list, but if he did, that would just make, I think if I was PPA or MLP, I would be more excited about that, because imagine the money you make off of his
Right.
name.
Yeah, they get to run best in class clinics around the country.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that will be the case either way, right? They've got
Yeah.
pros, actively touring pros,
Yep.
running the best clinics across
Yeah.
the country.
Yeah, for sure. But what does that do, Zane? This is a good question for you. What does that do? So we'll just use Riley as an example, but if you're ProXR, how do you feel about Riley not playing PPAs?
I think, you have to kind of take it on a case by case basis. Like, I'm sure there's going to be a conversation between Riley and ProXR about this, right? Like, I'd assume everybody has a contract that says certain requirements, right? Maybe it doesn't list out tournaments specifically, but any of these contracts are basically based on the fact that somebody is a professional pickleball player, right? If I quit pickleball, my contract with ProXR would be done, and so would everybody else's, right? That if they did the same thing. So I'm sure that this isn't a decision that Riley is making in a vacuum, right? I'm sure that there is gonna be some conversation with ProXR before he does something like that.
Yeah, but he's not going to not play the PPAs, and the PPA is, they're not just going to like make it a point because they want to make a point to not allow Riley to play in PPAs if he wants to play in PPAs.
I
PPA
don't
wants the
think
best product, and Riley's a big name.
The
Like,
PPA is not
Yeah, but if
disallowing
he has to
anybody.
pay his own entry fees,
They're not disallowing anybody from playing. Anybody can still play a PPA, but the thing is, financially, it probably, if you're looking at it only financially, it would never make sense for anybody outside of the NewCo to play a PPA event or an MLP event, just financially, right? Because if Riley does stick with his old deal, not take the pay cut, he goes to play a PPA, pays his own entry fees. The prize money at PPA has been drastically reduced because now we're all salary based.
right.
So let's say Riley makes 1,000. So like, I played that Desert Ridge tournament, JW Marriott. I got to the quarterfinals with Coop and bronze with Eric, and I made $950, right? So the prize money has been cut dramatically. Let's say it's Riley. Riley makes $950. He pays his 400 entry fee. He's down to $550, and then he has to remit 80% of that back to MLP.
Right.
What he made, like what is that, like $150 before expenses?
well, plus travel,
Before
right? He's going to
expenses.
lose his travel. He's going to,
So his gross
gonna lose
income
money
would have
unless
been
he
would have
wins.
been like $160.
Right.
So financially, there's 0 cents. That's where this comes down to. If you are a player who is outside of NewCo, you would only play PPA or MLP for the visuals, right?
Right.
Yeah. Now the question comes in: does a sponsor come in and foot his travel, or does a sponsor pay his entry fees because they want to see him? But I'll tell you guys right now, I know that Riley has already told his partners for Austin they've already found new people to play with. So at least in the near future, until they figure this out, he's not playing PPAs.
Right.
I'd have to imagine they figure something out. I think they want Riley. But then again,
I think they do too. I think they want all these players. And I think at some point, I think it's all new right now. And so I think at some point they'll figure out a solution.
Because you still have the Johnson 5, right? JW, Dylan, fresh off of their win over in Mesa, right? You can't have the best team, arguably like one of the best teams. I'd put him number 2 in the power rankings by a wide margin. You can't have him not competing, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's what makes it tough. Like, how do you? I mean, you gotta have, like, if the PPA's whole argument during the Tour Wars, was the best. We still have the best players. We still have the top of the top, which was Ben and Annalie, right? Well, now if you don't have the Johnsons, you don't have Dylan, you don't have Riley, you have a diluted product, right? The whole point of the merger was to make sure that all these players stay together. So I think they have to figure that out. There's got to be some solution.
Yeah.
But the Johnson 5 will be interesting too, because that's a whole different situation.
So the Johnson 5 right now they just don't have a contract really anywhere. They didn't end up signing
Yeah.
an actual MLP contract, if as I understand, and they're certainly
Yeah.
not with PPA. They're in basically no man's land, still trying to
Yeah. So
negotiate
they
their own
signed
sort of deal with
what?
Nuco.
Yeah. So what they actually signed was just a term sheet. They did have a contract, but for whatever reason they didn't sign it. I don't know if as an agent was working on things, but they didn't actually sign the contract. And so now, yeah, they're just in no man's land. They really are truly like free agents. And so they can go play whatever they want.
So they can play APP,
but
MLP, PPA.
yeah,
I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
saw this Pickleball World Series that was recently announced. So it won't start till January 2025, but it's like a global pickleball tournament with 6 stops. The goal is to have 500 to a million in prize money for each event. They want to get that up to 1.5 or more million per each event. The team event is like a lot of that prize money is allocated to the team event. So if Johnson 5, Riley, they go play these. The winning team per
Yeah.
event, per 6 events, gets 75 grand. So, if you go there and you win all those tournaments, you could start to stack that with APP winnings, and then you play
Yeah.
select few PPA, and then maybe you do MLP. But like, there's ways to monetize being a pro, even if you don't have one of these contracts.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I think in the end, those cooler heads will prevail, because you want Riley, you want J-Dub, you want Dylan, you want Georgia. Tardio's stock sky high, right? You want those guys locked in to PPA and MLP.
Right.
You don't want them free. I mean, I talked to an owner that said one thing that he that pisses him off the most is that how free they're letting some of these players go play APPs.
Mm-hmm.
If he had his choice, he would absolutely bury APP, and not have that as an option. And because with that being an option, I think that does take away some of the bargaining
Right.
power.
Yeah.
So,
Well, one thing in talking to owners lately, it's like the tone of the conversation has changed to where there is true confidence now that the merger is settled, it's done, they're moving forward.
Yeah.
Whereas previously it'd be like, yeah, we're moving in the right direction, but you never know.
Yeah.
And this time around, it feels like, okay, we signed.
Yeah.
This is how things are going to move in the future. This is one joint entity, and they're working together. There's no more tour wars.
Yeah, and they're like, let's get back to pickle. Let's get back to this is the fun part, right? Like this is where it's fun. The draft. I mean, we hung out at the draft, right? The draft is fun. Like that stuff makes it fun. Like the mock drafts, the predictions, and then the actual MLP play is like, let's get back to that.
Right.
Speaking of which, once we've got a draft figured out, we got to do a podcaster mock draft, right? You and me,
Yes.
Jimmy and Tyler, Graham and Travis, whomever else.
Yes.
Like that'd be obviously Matty Pickles gets a team, best podcast in pickleball.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I think we got to make that happen.
But he gets 2 seconds per selection. Because,
yes. Yep. Do you know?
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. Everybody gets a team, and we do like a mock podcaster draft.
Do you have any idea when the draft is happening? I had heard rumored of March 30th.
So North Carolina is what I heard. I heard that it makes sense to do it during North Carolina because there may or may not be, Tom Dundon may or may not own an arena.
Right.
That's available that day for where the Carolina Hurricanes play, and they might want to do like a full live draft at that arena.
Right.
So that's what was told, and then
they better tarp off the upper rows of that.
Yeah. Pull the curtains down, and then I was told that the target date for the first event, and this is all obviously super fluid because everything changes, but some owners were thinking about doing it in Miami because that's the same weekend as F1 and it could be a huge kickoff. but it looks like Atlanta is probably more likely.
So what is this Miami thing? Like, there's an APP Miami. There's a small like MLP All Stars sort of thing in Miami.
Yeah.
Like,
So that's kind of separate. That's just for like the Miami Open is gonna have pickleball players come in and
Miami
play
Open
just
tennis.
ATP
Yeah, that's
event,
tennis.
right?
ATP.
Yeah, and
Yep.
then there's racket.
So they're having
X.
pickleball players come in. James Blake is involved with it, and so yeah, he's gonna have them come in and just do like I don't know if they're playing an actual tournament or just exhibitions, but there's a bunch of MLP players that will be there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that they're gonna mix pickleball and tennis.
Well, there's also Racket X that weekend leading into the week, which
Yeah.
is like a racket sports conference, and a bunch of pickleball we'll be there. A bunch of pickleball brands will be there, so a bunch of pickleball players will be there, and fans that can easily go to the stadium and actually watch.
Yeah. So, and then
or wherever it is.
I think it's May 6th or 7th is when the Miami event was scheduled to happen for MLP. And it's a standalone event with no PPA.
Yeah, so I've got on my calendar MLP regular season in Miami, May 2nd through the 5th.
Okay, yeah. So I know that they talked about maybe having that as the kickoff, but we'll see what happens. I mean, I think there's a lot. The question is, do they go back to the drawing board? Do they stick with this 12 Challenger, 12 Premier? The people that pledge their money, do they all just pay their money and we move forward? Do they still draft where everybody gets the $1 million hypothetical or $500,000, budget? How are they going to do it? Or do they just white paper the entire thing and start over?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think now at this point, MLP was sort of just hypothesizing these things all on their own. Right now, we have to go back to the drawing board with the PPA side on that as well. And speaking of which, do we have a number of events that the PPA players are going to be required to play at MLP? Has that been hashed out?
So the contracts do state 6, but there's a lot of talk about where PPA said that they would be willing to switch out a PPA event for an MLP event.
There's ways to incentivize it.
Yeah, exactly. And that would put them at 7. And then the other 2 events, one's a mid-season tournament and one's a playoff. And they feel like PPA players would be willing to play those because there's actual prize money involved. And then that would put you at your 9.
If the PPA willingly swaps a PPA event for an MLP event, then we will know for sure that they're finally
100%.
aligned working together, right?
That's funny because that was my exact words. Like if that actually happens, because the mid-season tournament was supposed to be Beer City.
Oh, is it not anymore?
Well, I think it is, but it's probably not going to be mid-season because it might be the beginning of the season,
right?
Because that's in July, right? I mean, that's the question: is how many events do we have? Is it another wasted year for MLP? How many events do they fit in? Also, does it make sense? The other thing is does it make sense to have standalone MLP events, or do you piggyback them all off of PPAs?
Right. Well, I think in the near term, it's going to be piggyback. Just from a cost standpoint, it makes sense.
Yeah. I do know that they're developing software right now where MLP will host amateur events. And you can actually go in and say it's just Thomas by himself and he couldn't find 3 people to play with. He can just put his name in and he'll get paired with 3 other people to play team events before MLPs. So they do want to host amateur events. Or if you have a team of 4, then you can put in your own team of 4.
I've never played a team event amateur. I bet that'd be so much fun.
Yeah, for sure. And so to do amateur team events and have that with MLP, I think is going to be pretty sick.
Yeah.
The pickle box.
The pickleball box.
The dink
pickleball box.
Yeah. Just kidding. It's the pickleball box.
The pickleball box.
It is a subscription box.
Gear, accessories, apparel.
And it comes straight to my door with all the hottest pickleball gear in here.
It's so hot I can barely.
Over $250 of value in each box, and you only pay $99 for each one. Go to the dink.shop, undoubtedly the best gift for any pickleballer, or if you're like me, or anybody who listens to this, you're obsessed with pickleball, this is honestly the perfect thing for you. All right, so for you as a GM, okay, you and Richie and whoever else is in your circle for the Black Bears, your attention now shifts toward, okay, we're actually going to have a draft. Let's start thinking about how we're going to do this thing. What is like being a GM? Like, what do those conversations look like? How often are you meeting? Is it?
Yeah. So, I mean, Richie and I talk every day. If so, he watches a lot of pickleball. I think that Richie is one of the owners that's probably the most invested in pickleball. So he watches a lot of pickleball. We hosted a combine. We actually did this back in January before even we knew that there was going to even be a season or a merger. We flew in about 40 players. We had a company called Pickleball Vision come in, and they like do AI software. So they tracked every shot, and so we recorded the matches. And so, yeah, we scouted them. We had players from all over come in, but for us right now, we're challenger, right? And so these were all challenger level players. We did bring in like Tyra Black came in, and Vivian Glosman, who she actually might end up challenger, but, and so, yeah, that's one thing we do. We actually watch a lot of film, oddly enough. When we were looking for last year, we were looking at Rachel Rohrbacher because we actually wanted her for challenger. We didn't think, I mean, you guys know, you were there. We didn't think that she was going premier. We couldn't find any film of her other than a match where she played with Rob Davidson, and he had filmed it on his GoPro. And that was like the only footage that you could find. And we would watch that to try and see what,
No?
And even in that, you could tell that she could
You know the Rob Davidson?
So
No, I don't know what that is.
He calls the score, and then every time before he calls the score, he goes like this.
Yeah.
He's got the ball in his hand, and he's like lets the people know, hey, I'm about to serve, basically by like putting his hand up. Rob Davidson, he's a goat. He's like one of the nicest guys, but he has not played very much pro over the last couple of years, so that just dates that video with Rachel Rohrbacher.
Yeah, with Rohrbacher. Yeah, he's kind of fallen off for sure. Super nice guy.
Oh yeah, I love him.
He used to be a legend. So, yeah, we do a lot of that. We have a draft board that I kind of come up with mine. Richie comes up with his, and then we kind of compare. So, but it'll be interesting because if they end up doing one league, because that's the goal, right? And is every year 4 teams move up. And so eventually, what will happen is it goes 12, 16, but that means your last year in Challenger, if you don't move up, I mean, it's just 4 teams are left in Challenger.
Right. That never made any sense to me.
So
I don't
people
get
move
that.
up, but nobody moves down.
Right.
But nobody moves down
That's
because
capped.
the ultimate goal is it doesn't make sense. But they think that in 3 years the talent gap won't be so large between Challenger and Premier. And so that's the goal, because the argument was nobody wanted Ben Johns playing with the 96th player in the world.
They should just keep adding more challenger teams. You bring 4 up.
But I think at that point, you just expand, right? Then you add more teams.
I understand
and
the
there's
logic.
going to be more players.
I do understand the logic. Like, I think that eventually Premier should be able to support 32 players. It probably can't, or 32 teams. It probably can't right now.
Yeah.
Right? But I do really like the idea of promotion and relegation. And so maybe there's 30 Premier teams, but also 30 challenger teams, right?
Yeah,
4 move up every time.
Yeah, there's no
and then
incentive
you add
right now.
8 more challenger. The challenger level players are the ones that's going to grow the fastest too. It's going to take a longer time to get into Premier. You could support probably 30 challenger teams right now, right?
Yeah, and the other thing though is if you're signing players to a 3-year deal, right? And so you're drafting. So this is another draft strategy you got to think about. And so you draft your challenger players. Are you just drafting, and you say you win and you move up, you keep that same team. So you just drafting to get your ass kicked in Premier the next year?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So the way that things are supposed to be, the way that things were theorized previously was that you would now be drafting your team for basically forever, and then you would go to a normal free agency. So in the next draft, whenever that happens, let's say Tyler gets picked, he is basically on a 3-year deal with whatever team he has, right?
Yeah.
And they could, if he does poorly, like theoretically drop him and do a free agent pool, correct?
Yeah.
And so like when you really have to price in how much these players are growing, right?
Yeah, potential is huge, right? Like, not to put like any names out there, but do you take an Irina Tereshchenko and you think, okay, is this as good as Irina's going to be? Is Irina, you know what I'm saying? Or do you take someone like Vivian Glassman? That's probably a poor example, but someone like a Vivian Glassman and say, okay, in three years or 18 months or 2 years, how much better is Vivian going to be? You may not take her right now over Irina, but would you take her in 18 months over
Yeah,
Irina?
no, for sure. It adds a whole lot more depth to all of this, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And so there's a kind, and then who's on the downside of their career, and then there's a lot of interesting questions. I think on the challenger level, it's even more. The potential of players is even more important, right? Like a Jack Monroe, or like do you try and swing for the fences on someone like that? So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all works out. But I think personally that they should just get rid of it now. You can add teams and add them to challenger, but I say you go full 96 right now.
96 players.
96 players, have every team in Premier.
Damn.
I mean,
because you're just changing when it's basically just a shift in when there's not going to be fully optimized teams. Meaning, like, right now, if you have Challenger versus Premier, and these teams stay the same for 3 years, on a team that might have, let's say, Ben and Irina and Jack Monroe and Vivian Glassman, right? So Vivian Glassman is maybe not strong enough to be a premier player, but by the end of that, she'll be very good. Irina might be there, but falling off by 3 years within 3 years.
Yeah.
Same with Jack getting better. So right now, if you only have Challenger and Premier, you have the best product right now, but maybe not 3 years from now. Is there sort of like a protection for that? That would be like, I guess, the ability to drop somebody, right? Like you've got Matt Wright on your team, and he turns like 75 or whatever he is, and you decide you don't want him anymore.
Well, yeah, I look at it like this too. Like, so Ben, if you take Ben first overall, right? Ben's going to go first overall. I don't think that's a question. So if Ben goes first, and you spend all your money, because the way they're doing it now is you bid, right? You can bid 500,000. Is Ben Johns
500,000 to select to select your draft position? You don't select a player. You select a draft position.
Yeah,
but don't you have like 500,000 of credit to bid, and then you can bid above and beyond that out of your own pocket? Is there a cap to how much you can bid beyond the initial 500,000?
I think it's another 500.
It's just 500. You're capped.
Okay, so $1 million total.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
You have basically 500,000 Monopoly money, and then 500,000 real money.
Of your real money that can come out of your pocket.
Yeah.
So say there's $1 million. So and you bid. You don't bid on players. You bid on selections. So if you bid for the number one spot, right? So say you take your full 500,000 and you go, and you have to leave. I think it's like $3,000 for your next pick. So say you bid the full amount and you go take Ben. Now you know for sure that you're going to have Ben, and then you're going to have 46, 47, and 48 because you're out of money, right? Can Ben go and win with, I think we saw it. I mean, maybe Jesse's higher, but he won with Jesse Lacey and Eric Lang. So can Ben go win with Eric Lang, Lauren Stratman, and Vivian Glassman?
And this is the final draft, right? Like once this draft happens, there's no more future drafts. It's
for now, So now you're stuck for 3 years.
Go get Ben and lock him in now, right?
Well, this is the final draft, but what I don't understand is how, okay, let's say somebody from China just is a complete stud. How are new people added to the fold? So I think there would have to be a kind of another draft where Ben and, Anna Lee and Riley and all these people are off the board, but a draft of people who are
Isn't that like
unsigned?
the shuffle draft?
Well,
Or
so
is it
what
just
they're
free
gonna,
agency?
so they may do like a shuffle draft or like a waiver wire.
Yeah.
And what happens is everybody will get waiver priority. and you can actually trade. It's random, but you actually trade your waiver priority. So, for example, if you're number 1 in waiver priority, but you don't really want to pick anybody, or the person you want to select is like 8 or 9, you know that they'll fall to 8 or 9. You can actually trade that to somebody else. So they're trying to do cool things like that. But right now, we're told that you cannot draft anybody that is not signed.
Interesting.
So, like Augie, you couldn't draft Augie right now.
Wow, that's wild.
What do you think the incentive is for that? Why? Because they just want to lock these players down, and this is
because they're paying. I think because they're paying the salaries anyways. So to be financially responsible,
Yeah.
they don't want undrafted players still getting paid.
Yeah.
But for me, I look at it like this: like if Ben is playing with, if you have all 96 players and all teams in Premier, okay. Right. And Ben ends up playing with whoever who, and you have them mixed up, and like Jack Monroe's playing, and, Riley Boner gets brought up. Isn't that better than having, 12 Premier teams? And then as you bring up 4 challenger teams next year, all 4 of those teams, chances are they're going to be the bottom 4 teams in Premier. Right. Like, I mean, there's a really good chance that those 4 teams are just, aren't going to be able to compete. That's why they're in Challenger.
Well, that's why I think you need other draft picks. I think every year there should be hey, these are the people. So the people who are eligible for MLP should be locked every single year. And then at the next year, okay, this person is really good. There's a free agency or a draft of any player who's not currently eligible for MLP. And that way you can trade around basically draft picks the way that the NBA does.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they've got to figure that out. Or maybe you go expanded rosters to 6, and you can protect every year. You can protect 4, and then 2 people fall off, and you redraft 2 slots.
Because I think the thing that would need to be very careful about would be the team getting called up from Challenger, then just getting pummeled the next year.
Yeah. I mean, Tim Parks likes to talk about this because he's got his Tim Parks ego, but how realistically, and I love Tim, he's my guy, but realistically, how would the Hard Eights have done in Premier? They lose to the Bouncers.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I think they lose to the Bouncers. And nobody loses to the Bouncers.
All right. Hey, hold on. Pandas versus Bouncers. Pandas season 1 with Matt versus Bouncers season 2. Who you taking?
I think I take the Pandas.
Fuck yeah, baby. That's a win. That's our first win of the year. We're taking that.
I think I take the Pandas.
I think we were a less bad team than the Bouncers.
Yeah, I think you were. The Bouncers weren't even talking at the end of the season. They were so like,
hey, Matt Wright quit MLP completely, so
yeah, that's true. He never came back. That's true. But they were so fractured that Simone and Paris broke up their partnership for APP because of it.
Damn.
I mean, that's crazy.
All right.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised Hunter and Paris's relationship survived.
Well, you want to elaborate on that, or I think we need what would be fun? A full year power ranking of MLP teams, right? Like, obviously there would be of Premier teams, like there'd be the Chicago Slice with Ben and
So I actually talked about doing how they should have at the end of this year had not everything been complete cluster.
The best 4 teams.
How they should have had the squeeze play the Pioneers, right? Have DC play the Mad Drops from season 1. Have those top teams, but because or you could have done the slide. Like, it just kind of depends on. But you take those top teams and you do like a super tournament. I think that would have been pretty sick to watch.
Yeah.
Even like bring the 5s. That 5s team was pretty good with Leia and Hayden and James, and
they never won one. They were irrelevant.
They didn't, but they could be like the wild card. But yeah, I just think that you could get those, even the top 4, and just do like a tournament would be pretty sick. I think it would probably have to be the Pioneers. I still think it'd be the Pioneers and the Mad Drops versus the Slice and DC. Those are my top 4. Even though, not the Slice, sorry, the Squeeze. The Squeeze. Even though the Slice won, I still think the Squeeze and DC were the 2 best teams. Consistently. Who wins that, Zane?
Obviously, the squeeze.
So Ben, Tyler, Megan, and Etta. And then you have Catherine, Julian, Thomas.
That entire
And
thing is such a toss up. That's why we play the game.
yeah, that would be fun. But that would be like, tell me that wouldn't bring out fans.
That
to
would be
watch
an
that.
unbelievable.
As long as you could like really make it seem as though it matters and it counts, and this is really like the true championship versus an exhibition.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. There's got to be real money. Also, like, let's get real money.
That could have just been
for
the
these guys.
2023 championship. No season 1, season 2 bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's gonna do it? Who's got the money for that?
Jimmy, you just signed a
Sponsored by
Vulcan
the
Vulcan
Dink.
bags contract. Why don't you put some of that money towards it, and then
Yeah.
we'll.
Right now there's none, but these bags they look pretty sick. Like, oh yeah, they're not bad.
There we go. You heard it here first. They're not bad.
They're not bad. I think people
We'll send
like
that clip to Vulcan for you.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's cut that and the one about the balls. But
all right. Well, Tommy, what else do we have? Any other unanswered questions from our merger specialist, Jimmy?
No, I only had questions about like your place within the landscape. Like, you know, you've created a lot of relationships where a lot of pros will just hit you up and like vent, and you get a ton of information. But then there's the flip side, right? Where you've got some pros who are like, Jimmy needs to be canceled. What are like?
Sure.
So what are some of those? Like, I know you told a story of like walking by Tyson McGuffin at in Dallas, right? The whole reason you started the pod is because of like a beef with Jilly B, which eventually became a beef with you and Jilly B. But like, what are some of those relationships that you have that are, you know, not on the best of terms?
Yeah, I think that there's people out there that, you know, because I am pretty honest, right? And I think if somebody has a rough tournament, we're going to talk about them having a rough tournament. We're going to, you know, not sugarcoat a lot of things. And so I think that there's a lot of players that take offense to that. And I don't think anything I ever try to say is malicious. You know, I just try to keep it real. But yeah, I think it's offended. I mean, Tyson, we joked. The thing with Tyson all started because somebody sent me a picture of him in the Salt Lake airport. Okay. And his wife was carrying.
So this is just some random person who happened to be in the airport.
So this is the other thing is I get random messages.
Yeah.
And the worst is that people had found my phone number. And so I'll get texts from random. Yeah. And so someone sent me a picture and he was walking through the Salt Lake airport and he had nothing in his hands. And his wife had like her big Gucci bag and like carrying, and he's just like walking. And I just thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that, you know, it was nothing that like no knock on him, no, like in terms of like nothing mean spirit. I just thought that was funny. And then at TOC, he finishes when he played with Ignatowicz. Ignatowicz. And he gets up, he goes to walk out, and, you know, his Stallion Performance guy picks up 3 huge Selkirk bags. Tyson walks out with nothing in his hands. And I just thought that was funny. It was funny. We kind of made fun of it a little bit. He got pissed, obviously, went at Tyler in that tournament, takes lots of shots at us now. But I was told, I haven't watched his new show, Meet the McGuffins. I've yet to watch it, but I was
different
told
than the podcast?
Every time that
is that different than their podcast?
Yeah, I guess they have a reality show now.
Is it on YouTube?
That just follows him around. I don't know. I've never seen it. Someone told me about it. But they told me that he goes to the airport multiple times and he always carries the bags. And he almost like hitches them up on his back, like almost just to make a point. Right. So that's funny to me that he like plays it up, right? Yeah. Like, you know, and he did that to me in Dallas. Like he walked by me and he like had his bag and Megan didn't have anything. And he like, you know, so like I said, it's not, but there's some other players that don't like me. I mean, it is what it is.
Do you ever talk to like Ben and Colin? Do you ever talk to Anna Lee and Lee?
Yeah. So I think Anna Lee is one of the ones that I'll probably never have a relationship with, just because, you know, we mentioned some of the stuff with Alshon early on. So I don't think that we'll ever.
Wait,
in fact, Tyler used to have a pretty good.
Was that Tyler who mentioned that?
Well, that was me.
Oh, okay. Thanks for clarifying.
But Tyler used to have a good relationship with them, and he hasn't. He said that that's kind of deteriorated, which I think kind of bums him out a little bit because he felt like he had a pretty good relationship with them. But Ben came on the pod. Ben was awesome.
Oh, did he really? I didn't know that.
Ben, yeah. So Ben came on. We talked with Ben. He, it's great. He, you guys know Ben. He's very honest. He's got nothing. I said, "Is there anything you want to cut?" And he's like, "I've got nothing to,
Right.
So, yeah. So I think I have a good relationship. I see Ben at tournaments. We say hi to each other. I've never talked to Colin. You guys obviously is a frequent guest for you.
No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding. We like Colin. Colin's fun to chat with.
I can go talk to the wall. If I get bored and want to talk to Colin, I'll go talk to the wall and we'll call it good. So, yeah, But everybody else, yeah. I mean, and I've become good friends with a lot of people. I mean, even Julian, dude, I go at Julian hard. I go at him hard. And whenever I see him, we're fine.
Yeah, I feel like Julian just does not care. You can say whatever you want about the guy, and he's just like, he's in his own world, which, like, he dishes it out, he takes it. Like,
you know what?
That's...
Yeah, I do live in a penthouse, and I do drive a Mercedes, and so what? And I do have a $5,000 pickleball bag. And he's like, and I don't care.
Whoa, he's got a $5,000 pickleball bag?
Yeah, dude, his pickleball bag is a designer freaking duffel bag.
Oh, is that like white and blue one?
Yes, that's $5,000.
Can you go like buy that, or was it custom made for him? It's just 101.
Yeah, no, he bought it. It's like a I don't even remember what brand. No, he bought it.
How do we know it's $5,000?
Because we looked it up. I saw it. I asked him, and then I looked it up.
All right, we might need to figure out what that is. Get an affiliate relationship going with the brand. Though I don't know how many of our listeners are going to shell out $5,000 for that.
Julian Arnold uses a designer handbag for his paddles.
I love it.
There we go. I have actually noticed this bag recently. I didn't really think anything of it.
You knew that it was blue and white.
Yeah, no, I knew it was blue and white. I was like, oh, that bag? I always thought it was kind of weird. It doesn't look like a pickleball bag.
Yeah, no, it's like a $5,000
It also doesn't look
bag.
like it should cost $5,000. It looks like something like a slightly better version of something that you pick up when you're just scrambling for a bag that you need.
Yeah, right. You got to hurry to the airport, grab the first thing I see.
I'm trying to find this thing.
So
we haven't really given you much to work with.
I'm just seeing if there's a blue and white bag on his Instagram.
There we go.
Oh yeah, there you go. That might be good.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah, ask him about it.
Well, speaking of,
Doesn't he live? He lives in Austin,
he does.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. He's actually playing some tournaments with Tyler coming up.
Really?
So he must not hate us too bad. He did tell me that if Tyler, because Tyler's been wearing that headband lately. I don't know if you guys have seen that thing. It's horrible. And Julian said that he will not play with Tyler if he wears that headband.
And what's Tyler's response to this?
I think he's going to wear it because Tyler thinks it looks good.
There we go.
It's like one of those stringy ones that like girls wear. Like,
oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's a pass for me. Doesn't look great. Some people can pull that look off. Not Tyler. Some people can pull off the $5,000 handbag. Not Julian. So they're made for each other.
Yeah, exactly. That was the other thing. So I had somebody send me a picture of Julian driving through Austin.
Wait, that was actually hit. I thought that was a joke. That's actually his car with the license plate.
Yeah, someone said that.
He does have that.
I'm starting to like Julian more and more.
Yeah. They said that he lives in their apartment complex, and they sent it.
I want to go back to what you just said about I had somebody from Austin take pictures of Julian. What? Like you calling in your paparazzi buddies or what?
You got people in the airport, people around Austin.
Again, one of my guys.
People are everywhere. Nobody's safe. Nobody is safe.
Well, give me a heads up if you're going to take some pictures of me from your guys in Austin.
Well, I mean, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming, Zane. You're next. So it's been, but like Thomas, like you said, I think that, you got to take the good with the bad. There's times that literally, like, there's times that I'll see Connor Pardo at an event and he will not say a word to me. Like, he just thinks that, like, there was a lady at the PPA that hated me. Like, she would, I guess she would literally clip every single comment I ever made about the PPA and send it out and tell them that, like, I need to be canceled.
Yeah, dude.
And then there's other times that, like, I'll see MLP guys, like, I technically work for MLP team, and they'll be pissed. Like, I was actually told that I can't be on any MLP calls until I have a talk with somebody.
Yeah, you're like technically media. I mean, we were, because I think I was on draft calls, and then eventually it was said that I can't be on draft calls because I'm technically media. I would assume there's the same protest for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And they even sent out like a internal memo, and I probably shouldn't say this, but it basically talked about breaking stuff before they were able to get it out.
Right. Like they,
And I'm like, look, you guys, like I'm bringing publicity to you guys. This is a good thing.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean,
But they don't always see it that way.
I think there are definitely people in the organization, and Connor would say this is like, it's good that you're talking about us, right? As long as you're not saying something insanely malicious, like there's going to be criticism. It's far better to have people reporting on this stuff, talking about it, caring about it, than worrying about every little negative thing that gets said. But then there's people in the organization who are like super protective of the brand and are much more sensitive and don't look at it from the big picture lens.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was, that lady that went on and commentated with Jim Kloss, right? I mean, she went all the crazy stuff she said, but in the end, like I actually said this to Connor. I said, dude, and he's never going to admit this, and I don't blame him. He shouldn't. But I said, hey, this is actually ends up kind of being a good thing for you. You guys have tons of buzz. Everybody's talking about it, right? Like everyone's talking about, obviously they're watching. And I said, so it's kind of like not the worst publicity in the world.
Yeah.
Of course, he never responded, but I know where his heart was at. He agrees.
I felt bad for that lady. I feel like I could see people that I know that are close to me who, if you put them on a mic, they're going to try and say things that are funny or smart, and they're not meant to be on a mic in a public setting. And I feel like she ended up on that stream, and someone needed to pull the plug.
It was like an open mic and she just kind of bombed.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So we have a podcast coming out this week with Mish, and she talks about it because, and just talks about everything that like they're required to do and kind of like what happened with this lady. But also she has a funny story. Someone came after her, Mish, thinking that they were that lady.
Oh, really?
She was that lady. Yeah. And like tried to get up in the booth and was like yelling and
really.
So yeah, she pissed off a lot of people.
Yeah.
But like you said, some of us don't have a filter. You get them on a mic. The times that I've commentated, Dave Fleming has told me that I have 2 rules. Don't talk during the point and don't swear.
Yeah.
If those were her only 2 rules, she kind of followed them. Well, she did talk during the point, but.
Well, I was thoroughly entertained. I think there needs to be a Manning cast. Like somebody, Jimmy, I think you and I got to start our own not safe for work Manning cast of the PPA. Like, I mean, that sounds like a win. Like the cancel
unfiltered,
cast.
Uncensored.
That's what it should be called. The
Cancel
Pickleball
cast?
cancel cast.
Yes. Yeah. Unfiltered, uncensored. Yeah. We should do match analysis and just break down really how you truly feel about that AJ Kohler speed up from 2 inches off the ground.
How unfiltered are we going to get?
Yeah.
That's the only question.
Put it behind a paywall on Patreon or something, and just go balls to the wall. People will pay for that.
Oh, for sure. One time we were jokingly said, true story, we jokingly said, because we had, right before Tour War, we had Connor Pardo come on our podcast. And then literally like the next day was when all that Tour Wars stuff broke out. And on our podcast, Connor was like, schedule's coming out for MLP soon and all this stuff. And then immediately he was like, don't release any of that. And we've had people offer us like legit money just to have a watch.
Now that it's all behind us, I wonder if he'd be okay with you releasing it. I would love to. I'd love to go back and watch
like
that.
He's very complimentary of MLP,
Right.
but it's just funny the stuff that he says, like, the schedule's coming out Friday and all this stuff, and then like 2 days later,
Release the tapes.
Yeah.
Release the tapes.
Yeah.
So maybe do a little pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Snippets of it.
Yeah. All right. I only had one other thing. I want to know if you knew anything about this, because Connor Pardo had tweeted it and then subsequently deleted it. But he was teasing something called the Gamemaker, which could be that software you were talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know for sure what that is. I think that is that software that they've talked about creating, like you can create your own tournaments and your own brackets and things like that. But then I do think part of it is going to be this team software that they're trying to create.
Right.
I think that PPA's ultimate, or Nuco now, their ultimate goal is to not control everything, but control everything. Yeah. Where they have their hands in everything, right? They're running their own software. They're running their own brackets. They've got Pickleball Central, amateur. They have their own amateur tournaments. Like they have their own governing body. I think that's where they're headed.
Yeah.
They're going to have their own, and so everything is going to be all encompassing under that kind of umbrella. And so, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that anything that somebody is kind of able to come up with, they try to duplicate or improve
the only like equivalency that I can think of is like Spike Ball, where Spike Ball is the brand and the sport, does the equipment, does the tournaments, right? Like owns all of it.
Yeah, somebody mentioned, I don't even know what Spike Ball is actually called, but somebody said it to me the other day, and they're like, have you ever played that? I was like, I don't know what that is. Round net, that's right. And then they're like, yeah, it's Spike Ball. And I was like, oh, why didn't you just call it Spike Ball? And they're like, well, that's the brand.
Right. Because they try, right. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Spike Ball just came out with pickleball software, and they released a product that's basically just a round net with paddles. So that guy, right. Spike Ball Chris, who like founded it, is super into pickleball. So
interesting.
I don't know.
Have you seen those basically like cornhole with pickleball paddles?
I mean, you should just take any game like that and just create your own and then add wooden pickleball paddles and call it a product. That's what people are doing.
I think
there's a bunch of variations of it. Then there's like the four-square pickleball net thing that came out. CrossNet did.
That's right.
There's this other, I think it's Pickleball Smash, where it's like
that's right, Pickleball Smash,
paddle, and then like a.
I'm a racket sports junkie, but those are all kind of dumb, I think.
Yeah, and then
especially like cornhole.
Zane, have you ever played Zane? Zane, you played TOC, right?
Once last year.
Rest in peace. So at TOC, there's actually a sewer cover in the middle of the grass, and these kids, they've been doing this for like 5 or 6 years. They went and they invented like sewer ball, and they would play off the sewer cover with their paddles and their balls. And they've been playing it for years and years over there, like in Brigham City. And one year, like I saw Irina would play with them, Callie. And they started getting all these pros to play, and it's like, just take your paddle and you can invent anything off of it.
Yeah, we should go out onto a golf course and just play 18 holes with a pickleball.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Paddles.
Yeah,
let's do it. I'm bringing a gearbox for the driver, obviously.
Yeah, right.
That'd be interesting. You'd have different paddles for different. For different like ranges and whatnot.
Yeah.
Then they have that soccer golf now.
Yeah, that's
soccer golf.
Oh, there's whole golf courses, and the hole is
that's
big enough for a soccer ball.
Have you seen Tech Ball? It's soccer ping pong.
Yeah.
Yes.
They had that at halftime of Major League Pickleball. One of the first ones in Austin.
So Tech Ball, there's actually a couple MLP owners that have investment.
I remember that. I forgot who that was, but
I think Chaffetz and some others. So.
That sport actually fills up stands pretty good in what I've seen.
Yeah, it's entertaining.
Those people are so good at that sport.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's lots of variations out there, but maybe you just need the Dink branded version of all of these.
Yeah, no, I'm in. I kind of forgot we were on a podcast. I feel like we've just been talking about nothing for 10 minutes.
This is going to be our best performing
podcast. Yeah, that's what happens. You're like, I don't even know what we talked about. It's like 50,000 views.
Yeah, we got through like an eighth of our list.
Yeah, we had a bunch of other stuff, but I figured it was all going to revolve around like MLP and the merger and stuff. So, yeah. What else, Jimmy? Give us some break some news. Give us something juicy.
Nah, he saves all the good stuff for his podcast.
Yeah, seriously.
Unbelievable.
No, there's nothing like. That's what's crazy.
Yeah, are you worried about your place in pickleball? I mean, you were like the source.
Yeah,
of
I don't have a place.
All the insiders.
There's nothing. I need some like drama. I need some scandal.
Well, one of your guys who goes and takes covert pictures of people for you, have them, assault somebody or something.
I know. They need to come
Good
up with
idea.
some scandal. Yeah, we need something. Like we need another Donna porch plant incident or something.
Oh, did you watch our Riley episode where he was?
Dude, it
So
was
funny.
great. I love that Zane was like, if you have to go to the bathroom.
Oh, did that actually make it
Loved
in?
it.
Was that
Yeah.
how we started the episode with?
Yeah, and then we put it like on a social
Yeah.
clip, and he commented like, "You guys love to stir stuff up." There were multiple times that
Yeah.
episode where he was like, "I'm not gonna say it. All right, I'm gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it."
I think the best was when he was like, I'm not going to talk about what paddle I'm signing with. He goes, well, let me tell you why I like
Yeah,
ProXR.
right.
Yeah,
right,
we
right.
didn't really conceal that one all that great.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like the worst. I mean, the thing is he'd already been playing with
Right.
it. Even when he said, he was like, when he teased it, you saw the QR code at the bottom. There's only one with the QR code
yeah,
on the handle.
right.
So, but yeah, it was just funny. I actually liked that interview. Like, Riley was really candid.
I don't like
and-
how you used actually there,
No.
but all good.
Well, I mean, actually, I was actually surprised because I think Riley can come off a little,
He doesn't say a lot. All the players that seem stoic and quiet and maybe like little RBF, you get them on a podcast, you actually talk to them, and they always end up being like the best guests. I think Colin's
Yeah,
one of the best
for sure.
examples where he's sort of stoic. You don't get a lot out of it. He's just kind of complaining next to Ben on the court all the time. And then you get him on a pod, and everyone's like, that's the best episode ever. Like, Colin's the best. I could listen to him talk for forever.
Yeah, Colin. I mean, other thing is, how do you not, like, as a fan, not want to pick Colin's brain,
Yeah.
right? Even Ben, when we had Ben on, Ben's sitting there eating salmon in the middle of the podcast. Like, his hair's a mess.
Right.
I'm like, dude, did you just wake up? And he's like, oh, I just went and did one of those plunge things. And he's just like so real and honest. I think people really liked it.
Yeah, it's good to see that side.
So, yeah.
All right. Anything, Zane?
I got nothing. Thanks for chatting, Jimmy. We appreciate it.
Zane, you ready? You ready for the big day?
Yeah, it's coming up.
Which big day? Oh,
March
yeah.
30th. Jimmy's gonna come officiate my wedding.
I'll be there. I'm gonna take some pictures and send them to
I'm gonna
Jimmy.
There we go.
I'm an ordained minister.
I believe it. It's giving.
Just kidding, I'm not. But
It's giving ordained minister. I think of Jimmy. I just think of
hey,
a
you've
man
been
of God.
you guys have been dating for how long?
Over 10 years. So it will.
Are you worried that this is gonna ruin it? Like making it official?
At this point, not really. I feel like we've been married for like 5 years at this point, so it's just putting a bow on top, I guess.
How many
fair.
pickleball players do you think will be at the wedding?
There's not a ton.
How many
So
people in the pickleball space?
in the pickleball space? Maybe like 45, something like that, of like 175.
That's
That's still
yeah, that's
impressive.
Yeah, not.
That's a lot.
Probably less. Probably less.
Like,
than.
Like there's some like Althoff is a guarantee.
Oh yeah,
right?
Althoff, take it to the bank. Althoff's got a speech to give, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Altoff's got a
That's
speech
gonna
to
be
give.
so good.
I assume that Coop is 100% going to be there.
Yeah, you guys just want to just guess or what?
I just feel like I just want to know who your true friends are.
Sincola, Monroe.
Sincola. I don't think Jack is coming because we still have a lot of the players are.
Plus, I assume there will be alcohol, so Jack can't make it.
Yeah, there will be alcohol. No children allowed, so no Wyatt.
I saw that
Stone.
on the thing.
No, nobody who acts like children. So
Hey, here's the question: what if the draft is that weekend?
that's what it's supposed to be.
Because North Carolina also, so some of those players will be playing in that event, right?
Yeah, so there's a lot of people are very very questionable. What
Should we move the wedding?
you know what? Maybe I'll just if I get drafted, I'll just zoom in. How about that?
From the
You
altar.
can do it from the Hurricane. You can have your wedding at the Hurricane Stadium.
I've made too many deposits for that to be the case. I've paid too much money for this wedding for that to be the case.
Just ask Dundon to pay you back. I'm sure he's good for
Yeah,
it.
me and Tom are like this. So
Well, congrats, Zane. I'm excited for you.
yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate
deal.
it. It'll be I'm excited for it as well. So it'll be a good time.
Thomas, you gonna do a live pod?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what kind of content we could create.
Go for it. Actually, you guys want to know the craziest thing?
Yeah.
So we decided not to get a normal wedding videographer. Guess who we got? We got Chanel.
Who's that?
We got
Oh,
Chanel.
you did?
She's never done a
Oh,
wedding
yeah.
before. And we were like,
Wait,
perfect.
who's Chanel?
Chanel's the person who does social media for. She started out with the Johnsons.
Everybody.
Okay.
She does Johnson. She does the Heart 8. She does like 3 or 4 MLP. She was doing it for all of MLP. She does a ton of players. Yeah, she's probably the biggest thing in social media for pickleball.
And she's like, I've never done a wedding before, and we're like, absolutely perfect. Because what she does is she just talks to people and she like coaxes interesting stories out of them,
right.
and
She's so good.
and that's exactly what we wanted. So we got Chanel as our wedding videographer.
I like it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we're stoked for that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Subscribe to our Patreon and you can watch the wedding live.
She's gonna have like these slow-mo videos of like Zane walking down the aisle, like she would with pickleball videos. It's gonna be sick.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's gonna crush it. So
It's awesome.
perfect.
All right, boys.
Sweet.
All right,
Thanks,
Jimmy.
guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Pickle Pod.
Okay.
Pickle ball.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, rather had fun on Yagi.